Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder we are looking on the update 1.93 dev server at the USS Pensacola. This is the new top tier vehicle that is coming to the game for the Americans in update 1.93 for the naval aspect of the game. It actually comes after all of the other light cruisers because it is a heavy cruiser. It is the first rank 5 that is going to be in the game for the Americans, and you can see it is a very large machine. Even though it isn't as large as some of the others, when it comes to the game, it still will pack a hell of a punch. The USS Pensacola on it has 2 sets of triple 8-inch guns, 2 sets of double 8-inch guns as well, and then 8 5-inch guns, 2 of the 1.1-inch Chicago typewriters, so quad 1.1 inches, and 4 12.7mm ANM2s. So if we generally look at its armament, the main armament of the 10 8 inches does very much resemble something like the Mogami and other heavy cruisers that we see. It's a little bit less, I believe, than the Hipper. I think the Hipper has slightly more guns than it, if I remember. It has 4 dual sets of 203, so that has 8 main guns. Never mind, it actually has more. But the 8 inches are definitely there to pack a punch. The issue is with the secondaries. So with the 5 inches, you only have 8 of them spattered around the place in 4 sets. So you've got 4 at the back here near the back smoke funnel, and then you've got 4 around the bridge. Then of course you have the 2 typewriters. So you got the AA guns here and also here. And alongside those, you have the 50 cals, which I'm still not exactly sure where they are, if I'm being completely honest. I'm guessing they are somewhere, I'm just not exactly sure where. It's very hard sometimes on these models to see everything in such intricate detail. Oh, they're up here, never mind, there we go. They're right at the top of what would be classed as the bridge. So, with this machine, what we see is, as I said, the first heavy cruiser for the Americans. That means that it's going to come up against other heavy cruisers with very large guns, so the armor is incredibly important. The problem, though, with the Pensacola is the armor isn't the best. You have 101mm right here. This basically protects the ammunition storage of the front guns. But if you look at the back guns, they only have 88.9mm of armor around this massive ammunition storage down here. On top of this as well, they do have some armor which is around the areas where the ammunition is going to be brought up to the guns, which is lovely. But for me, the only reason this armor is going to be useful is if it ever stops some splash of specific shells moving around the place. Also, with the guns themselves, the main ones, they got 63.5mm of armor on the front, and then on the sides they have, of course, 19mm, so they're not really going to be stopping anything. Maybe a little bit of damage, but that's really about it. You've got this interesting shape on the back of it as well, which is sat right here, 63.5mm, and then on the front there's 63.5 once again. The center belt area is, at least where it touches the water, is 76.3mm. with the top area being 38.2. So once again, nothing to really write home about if we're talking about its armor. It's okay, but it's definitely not up to the standard of something like a Hipper. There is a little bit of armor around the bridge, but still not enough to really stop anything coming in. There's the bridge and the radio station surrounded by the guns. It's powered by 2 massive sets of engines, which power 2 huge smokestacks, so at least it's not just one smoke funnel, meaning that it will be harder to slow down once it starts to get going, because remember, if you take out a smoke funnel, it generally also makes the machine a hell of a lot slower. You can see all of the transmissions in the back here going to be pumping hard to get this thing going through the water. It has a displacement of around about 12,000 tons, which if you compare that to some other vehicles like the Hipper is at 18,000 tons. So if we're talking about scale here, The Pensacola is about 2/3 of a Hipper in size, if you want to put it like that, and that is also represented in the crew. The crew of this machine is only 653. It isn't something to really write home about, meaning that the survivability of this heavy cruiser against other heavy cruisers is not looking great. If I'm going to be honest, it's not looking as scary as something like the Hipper, which is definitely a very scary machine. The other thing as well is the speed, though. The speed of the Pensacola, being 60 kilometers an hour, is something to really get behind. Being able to move about at that speed with the fact that you have all of these guns is going to be incredibly nice. Now, the main guns, the 8 inches, start off with some Mark 14 common rounds, the HE with the base fuse. They can get some upgrades in the APBC department, some more HE, and also they can get an SAPBC shell. So you can pen up to 448, 360, 154 respectively with the upgraded AP, and when the even more upgraded AP, you pen a little bit less, 374, 332, and 137, but at the same time, you get way more explosive mass. You get TNT equivalent of 4.61 kilos with this, whereas with the other one it's only 1.62. So you're pretty much timesing by 3 the explosive mass and only losing a little bit of penetration. So using the SAPBC seems a lot more effective than something like this other one right here. There is no torpedoes on this boat though, which is, at least for me, I would love to see some torpedoes. Always a fan of the torpedo. 127 millimeters, which are the 5 inches. They only have access to HE. So they're not going to be too useful against heavy cruisers, but will be useful against smaller boats and also other planes that are in the area. The other fact is no torpedoes, no bomb mortar, no nothing like that. You are heavily reliant on your main guns on this machine, and that's really about it. And also the speed that it's able to get around the place. It should be incredibly fast when you compare it to other machines, just because of the size of the engines and the fact that its displacement is a lot less than others. The other thing as well, the customization options, of course being a ship, there's nothing there. So we're just going to take it into a test drive just to show you how it feels. Oh, something I forgot to show. So, I'll go back actually and I'll show you this because I didn't show when I showed all the naval stuff, and I should have done. So you know how we have protection analysis for the wonderful little ground vehicles? Well, guess what? We also have it for ships. So let's say I want to shoot this thing with some of the 203s, like the 430 APHEBC. I can actually do it, and it will show me when it enters how much damage it's going to do. And I thought this is really cool, you know? You can actually see the protection analysis of the machine and how much damage something like the Hipper will do to your little boat. So let's say we get shot in the bridge, right? It's probably going to put quite a large hole in the bridge and just knock it out straight away. Maybe we can work out, is it going to hit the guns and take them out? Looks like that is a yes. What if it's the ammo? Is it going to point it out and make it go pop? I mean, probably, right? And so you can actually do protection analysis now on ships, which I think is absolutely awesome and something that should be marveled upon. And I wish you could do many points of entry, but at least for now you can only just do one, which is fine. You know, it's obviously the first time we've seen this type of system, but I just think it's really cool. So I'm happy that they've added that in. Now let's get into the test drive just to show you how it moves around and also some of the wonderful loading screens that we have. The fact is, with the secondary armaments that are available on this machine, they aren't a ton to write home about. You know, some 5-inch guns, 8 of them, some 50 cals, and then some of the very small little guns to deal with pretty much any air targets. Yeah, they're going to shoot down a lot of air targets. I mean, are they though? But the question is, can they kill the air targets before the air target gets to you? And that is always going to be the question for guns like this. Are they going to be able to track targets quick enough to be able to do the damage required? Now, the other thing as well is the 203 millimeters. So the 203 millimeters that we have here are incredibly strong at doing a lot of damage to a machine, right? We can fire them all at different times, and you can see that destroyer is just going to take so much damage from just one single barrage of this gun. But the problem is, with the gun, is the honest fact that the reload rate is incredibly slow. And this is a problem that a lot of naval players have told me a lot of the time, right? So the fact is, if you have a set of guns, unlike the Mogami or the Hipper, which are generally very good guns, but they have a very slow fire rate, you're not going to be able to do as much damage as if you were in something like a Brooklyn or the new premium boat that they just revealed for the Americans, which is just a Brooklyn class USS Helena. You're not going to be able to do as much damage with one of these things as one of them, or something like a USS Atlanta. So it's always a rate of fire versus an overall damage. Are you able to one-shot, or are you able to do enough damage with these guns to be able to cripple a boat in order to finish it off? Or is it much better to have that sustained fire from something which will give you a much more, set of what's the word? Like it's just, if you miss a shot, it isn't as bad if you have a much higher rate of fire. It means that accuracy is a little bit less important. It means that other things are a little bit less important as well. So as we're using this machine here, we're firing sequential fire, just so we fire them at different times. You can see that we can land a decent amount of our shells, but is it enough to justify where with a Brooklyn I would still be firing, and I would be constantly firing? Just to put it into perspective, right? If we compare this to something like the Brooklyn, you can see there that I was generally firing. Let's just use the Helena, which is the new vehicle. I probably won't do a video on it because it's exactly the same as the Brooklyn, and it would just be me screaming about how it shouldn't be a premium. But sorry, but I'm suffering with a little bit of a cold right now. But also you can see all the AA fire of this machine, completely crazy. But let's just say you're in this machine, right? So with this machine, all the guns are on target. You can just constantly fire with all these guns. You can do, this type of firing, and as the last gun fires, the next one keeps firing. So you can have a constant barrage of fire on the target that you're shooting at. You can just keep firing, and until you run out of shells, basically, is what you can do with this Brooklyn. It is absolutely savage how you are able to put down so much rate of fire. And if you are not as accurate with something like the 8 inches, then you aren't going to be able to annihilate targets as fast as the Brooklyn. And on top of this as well, if we just change targets straight away with the Brooklyn, we can just keep firing with these guns. Just keep firing, keep on trucking, keep going with it. So for me, it really is a question of, do you want rate of fire or do you want power? And if you want, if you want firepower, you go for something like the new heavy cruiser, and if you want the overall rates of fire, you go for the Brooklyn. Overall, it's nice that America has both choices now. They can pick whatever they feel like, but at the same time, it is looking very dangerous for every other nation. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.